Okay, so today I want to think critically about decentralization and what I call the sovereign AI movement. And I think part of what shifted for me, at least over the last year, is that I stopped looking at AI primarily as like a corporate story and started looking at it in terms of infrastructure, like it's an infrastructural story that's unfolding right now. And if you've listened to any of my voice notes, you know that I've long said that, AI is becoming more than just a tool. It's becoming critical infrastructure that's mediating our reality and experiences. Because honestly, when you zoom out, what we're seeing right now is like massive consolidation. Compute is consolidating, model training is consolidating, cloud infrastructure is consolidating. And look, I mean, we've we've read this book before, as they say. Like, in the early days of the internet, everything felt open and distributed, right? If you were alive during that time, please comment below so the young people can understand what that was like. Um, and, gradually, you know, our digital lives narrowed into a handful of platforms. So platforms for communication, for storage, for search, and a few companies essentially became the backbone of this. I don't know how to call it, like this global techno social order that we're all living under now. And honestly, I mean, part of it happened through convenience, through the massive integration of our lives into one system, and then the scaling of that, right? And now we're watching the same pattern potentially emerge with AI. But hear me out, because I don't think we have to repeat the same story, and I want to be very clear here. I'm not like anti-frontier lab, or anything like that, because, some of the most extraordinary advances in machine learning are coming from places like Anthropic and DeepMind. Like, DeepMind is accelerating, scientific research. I mean, other forms of research as well, but scientific research, unlike anything we've seen before, right? Like, so these systems are powerful and, like for certain research problems and enterprise use cases, they are genuinely transformative. Like, I have friends inside these labs. Like, I respect their work, and I know a lot of them, listen to my voice notes and read my newsletter. So I just want to be clear about that. Like, what I'm really trying to get at here is, uh, you know, what do most of us actually need? Like, what do us non frontier lab people actually need? So like the needs that I have as a researcher are going to be different from the needs that the average person who, you know, doesn't really use AI that much in their day-to-day processes have, right? Like, most people are not training trillion parameter models. Like, most researchers are not running, national scale simulations every afternoon. Like, a lot of us, or sorry, a lot of what we call AI use is like very basic stuff. Like, come on, it's like summarizing documents, querying like your personal archives, drafting, transcribing, organizing, like really basic stuff. So I don't think all of that has to travel through like hyperscale servers across like jurisdictions. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think sometimes, we can use like a drill to get at something that probably only takes like using your hand or, something much more simpler, if that makes sense. Um, so look, when you, I guess, widen the lens from just individual use to like nation state use, I think what I'm trying to get at is going to be a bit more clearer. So once again, like, I understand there are different individual use cases, right? But now I want to talk about it on the national scale, because what I'm trying to argue in this voice note is about the impact that decentralization on a national scale, even an international scale, will have on an individual. So, for example, I talked about this in the newsletter. The Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, delivered a speech that was, I mean, it struck a lot of us. I mean, but I was watching a live stream, so I was like in real time. I was like, oh man, this is a speech. Like, you know what I mean? And what stood out to me was not just this I mean, quite well written, rhetorical masterpiece. Um, it was really about like, hey, we need to acknowledge that countries in the so-called middle are navigating an increasingly bipolar AI landscape that is dominated by the United States and China. So for countries like Canada and frankly for much of Europe and the global South, the question is structural. Like, do you become a permanent customer of external intelligence infrastructure, or do you build some sort of domestic capacity, right? I'm not trying to say this is like an ideological question. That's not what I'm trying to get at. I'm saying this is more so about like resilience. Like if your public institutions, your healthcare systems, your financial networks, your research universities all rely on models trained and hosted abroad, you are exposed to policy decisions and outages beyond your democratic reach, right? So data sovereignty uh is more than just like a privacy slogan. Like whenever I'm at AI policy roundtables, I'm like, look, I'm not trying to like create a new hashtag. Like, you know what I mean? Although I know that has like some semblance of use, right? But it's more so like, okay, how are you thinking about hosting and keeping your data in a way that is beneficial to you or your company or to your country, right? And I think it's about just long-term stability because I mean, look around, guys. Like, like, come on, you see what's happening around the world, right? So I think we've already seen how fragile, centralized cloud systems can be, right? Like a single outage could cascade across industries, right? Uh, when intelligence itself becomes centralized, I think we'll start to see those vulnerabilities at scale. And once again, come on, like I'm not a AI doom and gloom person. I'm also not a AI hype person. I consider myself like a pragmatic optimist that loves to exist in the messy world of nuances is how I would describe myself. Um, but for many reasons, this is why decentralization feels so important to me. And not in like a like romantic way. Like you know how a lot of people are like, oh, this is our analog year. This is like our like offline year and hear this from the founder of Analog Social. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a way we can sometimes romanticize completely unplugging from these like messy systems and messy institutions. But one thing I've learned, especially from running Analog Social, is sometimes we have to engage uh with these messy problems. Like not everyone has the luxury because eventually we have to be honest, it is turning into a luxury. Not everyone has the luxury of being completely offline, right? And I think that's why I'm trying to like add some more like nuance into this conversation. um so look, I know some people are like, what decentralization? I think decentralization is pretty good because it introduces more competition into the marketplace, right? Because I think we'll actually receive more innovation for everybody. Like, look, I'm not trying to talk about one specific nation state. Like, I literally think for everybody, when you have local developers that can fine tune systems, for linguistic nuance, for regulatory context, for cultural specificity, we can make sure that this tech becomes more democratized, um, to different nations, right? And I think there's something like psychologically important here too. Hear me out. Um, there is like a growing narrative that intelligence at scale will converge into like one dominant system, like one apex, sorry for lack of a better word, like one apex model that everyone just plugs into. And that vision assumes that centralization is like the natural endpoint of our technological process. Like this idea of just like one huge like AGI godhead. And I think let me put my historian hat actually on for a second. I think history suggests something like just a little bit more complicated than that narrative. Plural systems in general tend to be more stable over time than like singular ones. So like diverse like ecosystems tend to outlast monocultures. Distributed authority, like put my political science hat on, often like protects against wide scale systemic failure, right? So when I talk about sovereign AI, I'm actually thinking about optionality here, right? Like optionality for countries to develop, domestic models aligned with their legal traditions, like optionality for institutions to choose infrastructure that matches their risk tolerance, optionality for individuals to run smaller models locally when privacy matters. Like I run a small local model on my computer because I don't always need the big computing power of like, some of these major AI companies, or so sorry, some of these major AI chatbots like ChatGPT and Gemini and stuff like that. For like normal everyday tasks, I just use the like local model that I fine tuned on my laptop. Like I don't need the big ones, right? Um, and look, I think optionality is actually a form of freedom. Like, if AI becomes the sort of infrastructural interpretive layer I've been describing, uh, you know, and really I guess the network, the mesh that determines how we work, how we govern, how we make decisions, um, then I think who controls that layer, who controls that network, um, really shapes the boundaries of agency inside of it, right? So I don't think decentralization is like a panacea. Like I don't think it will like automatically eliminate power imbalances. That's not what I'm arguing. Um, but I think it introduces friction into this very concentrated technology that we're seeing right now. It creates alternatives. It keeps the ecosystem from hardening too quickly around few nodes in the network, right? So I don't know. I'm curious how you see it, because we're already seeing this here in Europe in the EU. They have a sovereign infrastructure plan where they're moving away from American dominated technologies to just like use and produce their own. You know what I mean? So like we're already seeing more and more countries developing their own LLMs, developing their own personalized tech, because now AI gives them the capability to even do that, right? So now they're not dependent on the moods and decisions of like the United States or China. Like, so I don't know, like uh do you think centralization is, you know, just inevitable? I don't think it is, but I'm curious what you think. And like if you are currently living in a country that is investing in domestic AI capacity, I would also love to hear from you because I would love to do more episodes on that. Like, I think I'm blanking right now, but there's another country in Latin America that just announced their own domestic LLM, which is pretty cool. So yeah, I really would like to hear where you land on all of this. Um, and yeah, make sure you're following the podcast on your favorite platform. Subscribe, leave a review, share the episode with someone who, cares about sovereign and decentralized technical systems. As I always say, learning is a social process. Don't listen in isolation. Be in conversation with someone. Uh, and yeah, I just released a product called a critical thinking bot. It's a AI chat bot that never answers you, refuses to think for you, and instead it continues to ask you questions until your idea or argument is clear, concise, and defensible. And you can try it out. Link is in the description box. This is just version 1. This is just beta. So I would really love your feedback via the form on the website. And yeah, keep thinking critically. Talk to you next time.